Hello, we are live. If you're here already, thank you. Thanks for joining us early and being eager. If you're not here, then where are you? And yeah, please comment if you are here to saying hi. Tell us where you're from. Sometimes you might even need to add who you are as well, just because if I'm not connected with you, it won't come up with your name. But we'll see. But yeah, please get involved. Listen to Roxy share all of her insights and the lessons she's learned, and ask questions because your questions will be better than mine. But yeah, Roxy, how are you doing?
Yeah, great, Rich. And when you say all of my insights, we might be here all afternoon. I'll share all of my insights. Give the highlights, the best bits.
Yeah, the best bits. Okay, yeah, maybe don't ask for all of her insights then, because we have got places to go, people to see. But really excited for this. We'll give it 30 more seconds and we'll get going, Roxy. Have you been outside today?
Have I been outside? Yes, I have actually. I walked to the office this morning. I did go for a swim last night, which was beautiful. It was like an outdoor Lido when the sun was setting. Yeah, but no, I walked into the office this morning.
Nice. I got sunshine here. It rained a little bit as well, though, right?
It was all right in London.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. See, look, a little bit of kind of just rambling and we get to where we need to be. If you are here, as I said, please say hello. Add your comments, add your questions to the chat by doing that and adding to the comments section. And we'll answer those if we can. But let's get started. Really excited to have my friend Roxy on here to talk about what she's learned from doing. I've added 300 plus, but I actually think it's over 350 plus interviews with people, experts and lived experienced on the JAAQ platform. And I think actually this is going to be really interesting because I don't know what these are. Roxy's not shared these lessons, and actually, we progress through lessons and conversations. So actually, seeing what Roxy's taken and has impacted her most is going to be really interesting to see what lessons we can take from that on our podcast or my LinkedIn Live, whatever you want to call this. But let's get into it. Hi, Roxy.
Hello.
Excited?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm sat. So if this is actually, I've sat myself in the JAAQ chair today. So you say, I'm usually the one behind the scenes, and I've lost count. I probably should actually count up how many interviews that I've actually done because I've been at JAAQ now for it's like 2.5 years. So yeah, a long time. I've been here pretty much from the start. So yeah, done a lot of the different interviews. But yeah, sat myself in the JAAQ chair, so you get to see a little bit of like behind the scenes of the JAAQ, the studio.
And you get to feel the pressure of what your people get to feel now as well.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because we do put the light on the people, and you do feel a little bit like warm in the spotlight.
Yeah. Have you put the light on yourself though? That's the big question.
The light. Well, have I actually been? I don't know. I've done a few things in the JAAQ chair. I remember when I dressed up as mental health and they asked me to do some questions, and I actually forgot my own name when I sat in the chair. I think the pressure, the cameras and the lights. So actually, it's not an easy thing to do. But I think what we are good at JAAQ is creating that safe space for experts to tell their knowledge and their expertise, but also lived experience, creating a safe environment for them to be able to tell their story, which in the hope is hope and inspiration for other people.
Yeah, wicked. I hope I can do the same thing for you. I hope you don't feel too much pressure. But yeah, I'm excited to hear these lessons. We'll do some introductions. If I get myself out of the way first, and then I'm going to throw it over to you, Roxy, and it's all about you. If you don't know who I am, my name's Rich. I am a high-performance coach and owner of 2 companies. First one is LP Revolution, which is a leadership performance and performance coaching organization and development organization, helping each level of individual, team, and leadership perform at their best and helping them to create positive performance with lessons from sport, positive well-being, a framework and assessments, just getting them the awareness and tools that they can take to perform at their best. And the second one is a Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing education company and a support company. If you want to know more about those, drop me a line, because I'm not going to give you a sales pitch now. So that's me done, Roxy. It's super simple. Over to you. Roxy, please introduce yourself. Tell me who you are, what you do.
And this is actually the question that always throws everybody in the JAAQ chair, like, who are you? Because people, they I guess, are not used to talking about themselves, me being one of them. But yes, hi, my name is Roxanne McCarthy. Most people call me Roxy. I am head of creator engagement at JAAQ. Been here for 2.5 years. My background actually is I studied law, worked in HR for quite a long time, and then moved into the world of change management, digital transformation, and then ended up coming to JAAQ because, I guess the short story is because I dressed as mental health for 31 days of December in 2020 to raise awareness of mental health and talk about suicide, because unfortunately I've lost my birth father to suicide and a good friend in 2020. And I think what I found was people weren't talking about suicide, and I guess I was like, where did my friend have to go at that time when she was struggling? And I was like, I don't really want anybody to kind of go through what I went through, losing people to suicide. So if I could start the conversation in some way, and I think dressing up as mental health was a bit more of a fun and playful way to do that. And then I shared my own struggles with mental health, which I think surprises a lot of people when I say that I do struggle, because I am quite, you'll see I've got rainbow nails, rainbow everything. I am quite positive and, live life and just kind of quite carefree. But I do have struggles and have had difficult things happen to me through childhood. So struggling, openly sharing those things, I don't know, I felt at the time it gave people permission to struggle as well. It's like, oh, Roxy struggled. Oh, well, it's okay for me to struggle, which was very bizarre for me. But then I continued to share my story and open up that conversation about suicide as mental health, and actually on LinkedIn. We're back in the home of me sharing on LinkedIn, and ultimately connected with somebody amazing who was supportive of what I did, and that's ultimately how I ended up coming to JAAQ because of that. They'd seen my content and the work that I was doing at the time, and then reached out a good few years later to say, hey, there's this amazing opportunity. And I got the phone call about JAAQ and thought, this is, my dream. This sounds like amazing. My dream role. What's the catch? It took me quite a while to make the decision, but ultimately I have absolutely no regrets on kind of where I am and how I've kind of got here. I do a lot with work with the Samaritans, which I'm super proud of, whether that be volunteering on the phones or doing ambassador things to talk about and raise awareness of the charity, which does amazing things. Yeah, and that's quite a long-winded way of saying who am I. I love to do all sorts of different challenges, whether that be dressed as an elf or just being Roxy, training for a 2-mile swim at the moment and a half marathon, which I am going to try to be a Guinness World Record as the fastest female to run a half marathon dressed as an elf. So that's the next thing on the mental health agenda. But yeah, I love exercise, I love animals, and just all around having a great time.
Thank you.
Who I am.
Yeah, so I think from knowing you now for 1.5 years, that's a small part of who you are, I guess. And thank you for sharing, obviously, the challenges and the past as well. So thank you for sharing that. But it's great to see that you've made a lot of impact and put a lot of effort into creating awareness, and I feel like it is helping a lot of people. So well done.
Thank you.
Tell us more about what you do now and what JAAQ does.
Yes, so for anyone that doesn't know what JAAQ is, JAAQ stands for Just Ask a Question. It's a mental health and wellbeing platform, soon to be app, where people can come on and they can ask questions to experts or people who've lived experience. So I always give the example of, if you've been diagnosed with depression and you wanted to find out more, we've recorded 100 questions with a world-leading doctor talking about depression. So going over the I don't know, the signs, the symptoms, the medication, the treatment, the myths, the misconceptions, and you can ask like the world-leading doctor. And because of the way that we film our conversation, it feels quite like you're having a conversation, the person sat in front of you. So we do it from the doctor point of view, but then we're also starting to build out a suite of conversations with people with lived experience. So you can come on and, how was being diagnosed with depression? Like, what has helped you? Did you take medication? What other solutions were there? Like, how does it feel to live with depression, like day in, day out? So people can also, they don't just get the facts from the doctors, but they can also hear from like people who are living through it or lived through something, and then feel like they're not alone, or they can get some top tips or things that have helped them. So yeah, that is ultimately JAAQ. It's a free platform, so anyone can access it. So I highly encourage you to go on there and type in your questions and explore the different topics, because we've got for depression, anxiety. We've filmed some conversations recently around cancer and the link between cancer and mental health, particularly after the you've kind of gone through the physical side of it, and like what are the impacts of cancer on people's mental health. But yeah, there's such a variety of different conversations on there. I would encourage anybody. I work here at JAAQ behind the scenes facilitating these interviews, to get the best out of people who want to share their experience or their knowledge or their story. And I do think that every single person that steps through this door, and this is why when we get onto the 5 lessons, this is why it's been so hard, because every single person that walks through this door has knowledge, has expertise, has a story, has been through something really difficult, and is just so amazing in their own right. And I think I learned something from every single person that walks through the door. And I feel genuinely so privileged to almost hear that conversation firsthand, but at the same time being able to put it out to the world. It's just, I said earlier that I sit on the phones at Samaritans, and that's when people are in crisis. They don't want to be here the next day, so that's why they're ringing the Samaritans. And once you kind of have those calls and you try to help people to get to the next day, you think, right, God, what can I do, or what can we do to help people not get to that point? And that is where I feel like JAAQ comes in, educating people, giving people the information when they need it the most, before they do ultimately get to crisis point. So that's why I love what I do. And I just think that a lot of people can really get great information and great hope, or feel like they're not alone by having the JAAQ platform in their life. And I think once it is an app, it will be a lot more accessible, which is super exciting. That it's kind of, I've seen it from when we've just had a handful of people on the platform, and now we've got over 500 people that have kind of come in, and we're just growing and growing, and different topics. And yeah, it's amazing. I don't know whether that answered your question. I'm not sure what the question was.
I think it does. Obviously, I meet with all my guests pre-podcast or I don't know what you want to call this, but pre-conversation, and we have obviously had that conversation. And I asked you, so what do we talk about? Because there is so much from your lived experience, from who you are, mental health, and we come on this topic of the 5 lessons, because one of the things I found, I've done 80 of these now.
Mm-hmm.
And I find you learn so much by having a conversation. And actually, one of the reasons why I liked, and I still do this and like still doing this, is because I get to learn different lessons or different things about how you support people, how you support workplaces, performance, and different views. And so I was like, actually, this is from 350 plus, or however many you've done, there are going to be some really good things that stand out, which has probably changed your life. And so I was like, it's such a great, obviously the platform JAAQ itself to be able to share all of those things for people, but also for yourself, I can imagine it's been probably amazing as well.
Yeah, truly amazing. Are you going to ask me the 5 things now? Is that? I'm going to ask
you. So it's a really, do you see that smooth transition into this next question?
Yeah.
So should we get straight into it?
Yeah.
5 lessons from 350 plus interviews. What's your question first? I mean, there's probably no an order to this, or do you have an order to these lessons?
it's interesting because I wrote my 5, which was a very hard task anyway to whittle down, but then I did keep reordering. But I do know, so I think I almost have gone in like kind of chronological order maybe of filming. I don't know. But anyway, so I guess the first one is around like how change cannot be a threat and that it's actually a teacher. And the one I got this, so there was an interview. This was one of my first interviews. I think it was in maybe the first 3 months of me starting at JAAQ, and we had a guest in called Stefan van Niekerk, who is someone that's been, served in Afghanistan, unfortunately got blown up and lost limbs and then had to come back. And he now works in change management. And when he sat in the chair and he shared his story, one, it was phenomenal that, he just kind of the way that he articulates himself and his story, but just the way that he applied. I worked in change management for probably about 3 years and worked on transformation projects and looked at the change and how we move people through change. And when he sat in the chair and he talked about change from a more personal point of view of like, this is how I move through the change of basically, losing my limbs and like talking through like acceptance and like actually first of all, acceptance is the number one, the first thing in change of like how you can move forward, like having that acceptance that yes, my life is now going to be different and I have no real control over that. And I just then, having to ask for help to then ultimately be able to move through the change. And I think him then applying the change management to his personal life and like this huge life event, it just reminded me that actually all this knowledge that I'd learned in my change management career, like you need to apply this to yourself like every day, Roxy, because I am someone that does struggle with change. I don't know whether neurodiversity or just like being in a world where we ultimately like change is out of our control, like it's going to happen to everyone. It's almost like a constant in people's lives, whether it's loss or change or like someone, change of job. It's just ultimately, it's a constant. And I think just for him to share his story and talk about change and also just the resilience that this man had gone through. And the one thing that sticks with me and I'll never forget is I asked him if he would change anything about his story. And he just said, absolutely not. I wouldn't change the fact that I've lost my limbs. It's now kind of redirected me in life and I now live like a life that I really enjoy. And I just wouldn't change anything. And I was like, whoa. And there was also Mark Omroyd who came in as well, who's the first ever triple amputee from Afghanistan. And he said exactly the same thing. And I just thought, wow, if somebody can have that significant life-changing event and still not change anything about themselves and just talk about like you can see the resilience and you can see how they've moved through it. I just thought, I'm like as much change that comes into my world, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to get through it. And I'd still see those 2 conversations. I know I've focused on Stefan, but that as like inspirational, but like just hopeful of like just being all right in life. So that's number 1.
I'm going to jump in. You mentioned acceptance. I think that's a really interesting part of regards to change. Was there any tools or tips they mentioned about how to do that well?
Not that I can really particularly remember. We'll have to share the link and then people can go and watch the conversation for themselves. But more, I guess, even just thinking for me, when we use the change curve in the, you'll start with denial and then you'll move through different periods of like depression and then you kind of move out of it into acceptance and then you can move forward. And I think when I was working in change management, you kind of move up and down that curve of like you might accept it one day but you then might go back, and I think that is okay. Like I think that is okay, and understanding where you kind of are on that change curve helps you to think, oh, actually in this moment I'm maybe down here and that's maybe why I'm struggling with it. But then the day after of like almost maybe self-awareness of recognizing like, how am I feeling in the acceptance? And you're not going to get to that acceptance. I think a lot of people with change, they think, right, great, I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to accept it. But one day you might, and the next day you might not. And going back to Stefan van Niekerk, I'm sure he didn't wake up one day and just accept that he was going to have, you know, prosthetic legs, and he was probably going to have to adapt his life. He probably went up and down the change curve quite a lot to get to where he is now, to be able to say, look, I wouldn't change anything. So maybe it is, and I guess to answer your question, you're probably not in the acceptance phase, like, you know, in the raw depths of change. You're probably moving like quite a lot in and out of it, and it probably takes time really to get to that acceptance, because it depends on the gravitas of the change really in your life, and how, like, you know, it can be small changes, it can be big changes, and yeah. I don't know that. Does that answer your question, Rich?
Yeah, it does. I think it's helpful to share, like, it is a journey to acceptance. And also I think it's really interesting to talk about that curve and understanding denial, understanding that kind of mental challenge. I don't know. I'm going to ask another question, which I'm not sure, because I'm not sure you were prepared for follow-up questions. But did they share like a meaning or a purpose to allow them to get to, like, when they went through that, did they have a really deep meaning and purpose? Did they share that? Because I think, I presume, and I'm making an assumption here, that would really help them get through those deep, dark, hard days.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking, I mean, this is quite a long time ago, but I guess their purpose, they had families, that was probably one of their purposes, to kind of keep them going and keep them through. But then, you know, they've served in the army, for both of them, for probably a long period of time. So like, that's even just a big transition themselves. But changing their purpose, I think both of them probably to helping other people, is like, even like sharing their story, sharing their expertise, like to help other people was probably like the purpose shifted that. And I think that's even, I can relate that to myself, of like, you know, you go through like losing my friend to suicide, like probably one of the worst kinds of loss in my eyes. You know, my granddad died at 80, but he's lived a long, happy, joyful life, and you can kind of accept that. When your friend who's same age as you, beautiful, talented, got a whole life ahead of you, doesn't want to be here anymore, it's like you change. I don't know that my purpose changed in life, because I thought, I don't want anyone else to, you know, not want to be here or not go through, kind of as a friend, what I went through. So like changing my purpose into raising awareness and helping other people. So maybe that was their purpose. It's like helping other people, and maybe in their sense of helping other veterans that have maybe experienced that, and kind of transitioning back into like the real, like the normal world.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just an observation, and obviously we're making an assumption, aren't we? But I thought I'd ask those questions, because it's interesting to see how that changed and get to the acceptance part is the important part. Lesson number 2.
Oh, number 2. So number 2 is actually a sleep doctor called Hugh Salsick. And I just remember the moment of, I kind of sat through the whole sleep interview. We talked about insomnia, restless legs, snoring, sleep apnea, some other sleep disorders that I had never even heard of, and then just kind of like general sleep hygiene. And I remember I walked out of the studio and I thought, everyone in the world should listen to this, because we all sleep, we all probably have challenges with sleep. And I just found it so insightful, because I thought that I was, you know, I knew a lot about sleep, but then I went after the interview with Hugh, like I was like, wow, I'm so educated in the world of sleep. And I think that the key takeaway was that, you know, sleep it's not optional, like it's a necessity, and the reasons why we need sleep, you know, it's very interesting, of like, and I think what I took away from it is, even into my own life, is if I've not slept well, I shouldn't really be pushing myself with the training. And also something that fortunately have never really struggled with sleep, but I know people that have. And what gave me hope from that situation, the conversation with you, was that nobody needs to struggle. Like, there's help out there with any sleep disorders, like people, they just need to find the right person, or ask for that help with their sleep, because ultimately it's not optional. Like, we all need it. And I do think from that conversation, I think it's almost like I treasure sleep as like my I don't know what the word is, I treasure it. It's very valuable to me, and I kind of think about it in like a bit of a different way, because ultimately protecting our sleep protects our mental health. And one of the things actually that came out of the conversation with Hugh was that people who have mental health challenges think that because they've got mental health challenges, that's why their sleep is impacted. And the research says, this is quoting Hugh, is that actually the lack of sleep or the challenges with sleep ultimately cause the mental health challenges. So the key, I guess, lesson is that sleep really does. It's not optional, and it like protecting your sleep is protecting your mental health.
Yeah, I find so I always talk about behaviors and foundation, like the key behaviors, and I always start with sleep, because for me it's the foundation. Like without, and I don't think people realize the importance of the amount and quality of sleep, and those two things are really important. But without the correct amount and the correct quality within that amount, like you can't build a strong house without it. And so I always talk about it from that point. But what I don't think people really realize is the not just the energy impact of sleep. If you don't sleep very well, you maybe are tired and don't have energy for the day. It's the impact on memory, on brain output, the link between dementia and sleep. All of these things maybe you don't realize that sleep can impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, having that focus on sleep. I have a second one which I always put there as well, but I'd be interested to see if you come to one of those. That's a second behavior. My question is, what behaviors have you changed when it comes to sleep?
Good question. I think one thing that really stood out when I interviewed Hugh was that that everyone's, there's this whole thing of like, you need to have like 7-8 hours sleep. And we asked him that question, and he said, look, everybody is unique in their own way. Everybody has their unique own body clock. And if you're a night owl or a early bird, I think he said, you can't really change that. And you kind of like, everyone is kind of unique in their own body clocks and unique in the amount of hours sleep that they need. And he was saying that the barometer of have you had enough sleep is like, are you feeling alert and are you feeling rested most days, is kind of the barometer of it. And I think what I have, and maybe that's what's changed in me, is like not putting too much pressure on like, I need to sleep for 8 hours. Like, I just need to rest and make sure that there's healthy habits around the sleep that almost set you up for like the best night's sleep, whether that be 6, 7, 8 hours, like having no, like limiting the phone at bedtime, and just like either reading or just certain lights in the room and just certain settings and leading up to sleep to prepare your brain and body for like that, allowing it to have like that good night's sleep, however long that might be, and trying not to put too much pressure on it. Because I think before I did interview Hugh, I was like, checking my watch, like, oh God, like, have I had enough sleep? And rather than listening to my body and like, how do I actually feel today? Like, I do feel quite I do feel quite rested today. And, then I ask my body, rather than, like tapping into the smartwatch all the time and like, oh no, I should have been in bed an extra hour early. So like take that pressure off. And also one thing is that I do, and I will come to this a little bit in my other point, is around mindfulness before bed. That is my quite strict routine of like having that mindfulness just to like reset my body and my breath. And that's almost anyone that sleeps in a bed with me, is like friends, partner, they have almost had to just accept that Chibso Karake is going to do breathing exercises for the next half an hour, because I have one particular one that I just play on repeat, and that is like my ritual every night.
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of people would call that setting yourself up for the day ahead. The nighttime routine is the day ahead's kind of success.
Oh yeah, I like the thinking on that.
Yeah, and actually, from what I'm hearing from you, the lesson is, well, sleep is important, but actually to get good sleep, or for that to happen, the nighttime, that routine, the key behaviors before that to allow that to happen is what has changed for you, what you learn.
Yeah, definitely. That's and yeah. Was that a question, Rich?
Not really, but you can answer a question if you want to.
No, it's just like a there, reflection.
Do you understand? Lesson number 3. I don't know. I'm timing on this. I haven't got a clue how long each one's going to be.
Yeah, we're on 12:30, so I think we're doing all right. We're doing all right. So number 3 is around my topic that I'm quite heavily passionate about, and if you do follow me, you will hear a lot about this around suicide prevention. And a lady called Caroline Roodhouse came in, and it was quite prevalent. Is that the word? The strong message from the conversation was that suicide prevention is everybody's job, and almost like we can all play a part in saving lives and helping people to not get into the crisis point. And I talk about Caroline Roodhouse, and maybe this is one that it's more, is it a lesson? Yeah, maybe it's more reconfirming to myself that would like what I'm doing is good, to help other people. But I think my message and lesson to everyone is that if suicide prevention is everyone's job and we can play a part in it, you don't need to necessarily be volunteering at the Samaritans. It's more about listening and having those conversations. I'll tell you a little bit more about Caroline just to give context. So Caroline Roodhouse lost her husband to suicide probably quite a long time ago. She's wrote a book now called Daddy Blackbird talking about it, but her husband left her with 2 children, and she very openly talks about this experience and the impact that it's had. But now she is obviously dedicated a lot of her life to trying to educate people on suicide and mental health, especially particularly men's mental health. And probably this one hit a bit of a nerve with me because, when she talked about her husband, it was probably a similar age to when my birth father passed away. And I always think, if I didn't know my birth father very well, obviously I'm not going to know him now. But what support is out there for men that may be struggling, that that don't feel like they can talk, and then they ultimately feel like they can't be here the day after. So it's almost like having the courage to talk about suicide. And this again links back to mental health and me being very openly talk about suicide, because when my friend took her own life, it was very there was a lot of shush around how she died, which I totally respect, from a family and other friends' point of view. But I did kind of see that as being the problem of where did she have to go? And almost at the Samaritans, it's talking about suicide, or asking somebody if they are struggling, or you are particularly worried about them, asking them the direct question of, are you suicidal, is not going to make them, it's not going to put ideas in their head. It's almost you kind of get a yes or no of you ask that direct question. That's what we do at the Samaritans, and actually they will say yes or no, and at least then kind of the level of support, or how you can support them in that way. So even just opening up the conversations, even in the workplace setting or in friendship settings, and just that is ultimately, I guess, how suicide prevention and keeping people here is kind of everybody's job. And I see that more through, it's not just Caroline that's come and sat in the chair about losing people to suicide. We've had Daniel Wilkes, who's lost his dad. We've also had people sharing their stories of yes, I have tried to take my own life and now I am still here, and this is what steps I took to get better or feel better. And just seeing those stories of hope. And the last conversation actually sticks with me quite predominantly is with Chris Fredericks, who is is a black man, and they don't talk about mental health in the black community as much, and from like male from the black community, but then him sharing his story of he's lived with depression, loneliness, and tried to take his own life, but then kind of put things in place to help himself, and ultimately he's still here today. Him sharing his story, like, phenomenal, just to really almost like normalize that we might struggle in times and actually get to difficult and dark places, but we can come back from that, and there's support out there. There's the JAAQ platform, there is crisis helplines, there's doctors, professionals. We can get through this stuff. So that is a long-winded way. That is number 3 lesson.
Yeah, thank you. I also think it's a really important message and lesson, I guess. I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but the reason why where this started from was I lost a friend to suicide, and my response was, why? Why has this happened? And so then I went down this journey to understand mental health, and one of the things I did was the Mental Health Awareness Week, which I had a couple of conversations live on LinkedIn, and then for Suicide Awareness Day that year, I also had 18-minute conversations with people to share their stories, because that's 18 people. I think it was 18 people an hour. I can't remember the statistic, but just that raising the awareness, helping people understand this happens, and actually kind of how to hopefully, build awareness for the support around it. And I think my question to you is more of a question, but you've had a lot of conversations. I can imagine JAAQ maybe was built out of this similar kind of conversation. But what's the best, or what's the signposting that you see being the most being able to support, or what's the thing that you want to share for people who maybe are feeling that at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I think I guess the message is just like you're not alone in how you're feeling, and there is people out there. There's 22,000 volunteers that volunteer their time at the Samaritans at the end of the phone. They don't get paid to be there, but they are there willing to offer a listening ear to anybody that in that moment feels like they can't cope, or they're in distress, or they don't want to get to the next day. Like, there is somebody out there. So if somebody is in that feeling, in that place where I don't want to be here tomorrow, there is somebody that's been through that. So you're not alone, and there is helplines out there like the Samaritans. I mean, there's probably a lot more, and we can share some links at the end of this call, I think, because we talked about quite a few heavy things, so we can definitely share some links at the end so that people have got like different avenues to kind of go to if they are struggling.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that at the end. And I feel like I'm going to get you to attach all of these videos.
Yes.
Tag people in it as well, so they get a shout out. Lesson number 4, Roxy.
Yeah, so lesson number 4 is I'm not sure how to kind of sum up this lesson, but it's a lesson around loss, but also laughter. In the sense of, maybe we'll get to this is one that I've kind of not like titled, but let's go through it, and then maybe we'll get to like an actual title. But this one sticks with me, 1, because it was very nostalgic, and 2, because it was quite a powerful topic, which ultimately is going to touch us all, which is loss and grief. And it was with Paul Chuckle. So Chuckle Vision. So he came in to share his story about the loss of his brother. So you've got Paul Chuckle and Barry Chuckle, and he lost his brother quite a good number of years ago. And I like to share this story because when I was in the studio, I kind of sit behind the scenes, and Paul was sat in the chair, and a lot of my job is to kind of facilitate the room and support the guest and get the best content. And I just felt like when Paul we were just kind of getting prepped and ready for the conversation, I kept wanting to direct some attention towards the sofa where there was nobody on the sofa, because his agent was sat on a chair, which was like in the other corner. And I didn't really say anything. I just kept like wanting to direct attention. And then about 5 questions in, when he started to talk about his brother Barry, he said, "Oh yeah, Barry's here with me now." he sat on the sofa. And I was just like, it was a real moment of like, I'm not very spiritual or like into, ghosts or things, but I was like, I really felt like I felt him. So that in that moment, I'm like, wow, I'm actually sat in between the Chuckle brothers right now, because Barry's on the sofa. But I think how Paul talked about the loss of obviously somebody that was so integral into his life, like they worked together, they recorded all this thing, they were like, the best of friends, not just brothers. And obviously like he's lost him, but the way that he spoke about him was very powerful in like keeping his memory alive. And he was kind of direct, he was talking to Barry little bits, but he was just saying that he was always with him. And I've always felt like people I've lost in my life, they are still, whether you believe in ghosts or spirituality, or like that person and their memory can still live on. And I think one of the lessons I learned is that like I really struggle with loss. I think I told you like it's a change, and I really struggle with loss. And I struggle then to keep their memory alive and maybe talk about them. And actually, when I saw Paul sitting there talking about his brother and laughing and talking about loss, but also like still laughing and joking with it was just quite a powerful reminder of that these people, like we might have lost them, some of them granted too early, but we can still keep their memory alive and strong. And I guess that's what I do with my friend Jess, who died, is like a lot of my work is in her memory. And like I like to say her name, as much as possible, just like she's still here. She's still kind of the driving force in me to do what I do, because I do a lot of things like showing up at the Samaritans weekly to take calls. Like it's a big commitment, and there's a lot of people out there that do that. And it's like that was a moment of, I guess, nostalgia. And you'll probably remember, Rich, you're the same age as me, of the Chuckle Vision nostalgia. But yeah, just the loss and laughter. And I think it's such a good watch just from it's Paul Chuckle. Like Paul Chuckle is talking, he's there and he's talking about laughter and loss and love, and just, it was a real big reminder. So I don't know, that's, I guess, the lesson is in that. And there's one thing that he really said, and he actually, I think he might have started singing behind the scenes. He was saying like, reach for the, like, just everyone should just reach for the stars. Like, that's what we did with Chuckle Vision. We reached for the stars, and look at us, and we're doing all this. And I just thought like, like everyone should be reach for, because that's what he's doing, like reach for the stars. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing that Paul Chuckle is sat there now singing. Was it S Club 7 that sang that?
Yeah.
Well, come on, Rich, you've been dancing with me Wellbeing.
I think if you remember correctly, I wasn't really dancing. I was the one recording you guys dancing.
But that's, I don't know what that's but that's, I guess I'll let you sum that up.
Yeah, thanks. Listening to you, I think there's two things. I'm not a grief professional, but I remember speaking to people, and the people I've spoken to, there is something about talking about that person and the impact. Actually, people still want to talk about that person. They don't want to forget about that person. So actually bring that up, and sometimes it's painful, but the memory is positive. All the memories are normally positive, and so actually it can be a really good thing for that person to be able to talk about it. I guess there must be a stage, and this is where like a grief counsellor is going to be able to help talk you through that. But
and actually, this is we can probably share this other link as well. So a lady from Marie Curie, who was a bereavement counsellor, she actually was in the chair last week. She's been a bereavement counsellor for 20 years and gave some really good like tips on bereavement and loss, because me wanting to share my stories might be a different experience to a family member, and I think she gave some really good tips and expertise on how to manage that, so it's good for yourself and others. And she herself has lost, she's a bereavement counsellor herself, but she lost her dad quite suddenly, and she also lost her son at 18, who was going to get a heart transplant and didn't get one, and she lost him. So she's got like the lived experience as well as the counsellor. So that is a conversation we've recorded soon. So that's we can. Not the experts, but we know them and we can share them. That's the beauty of JAAQ, is that you can there's an expert there, like almost at your fingertips, and you feel it. You can ask, they click on these questions, and that person is sat in front of you, so you feel like you're having a conversation. And with the way we record it is so we can try to feel like we can still build that connection, even if it's somebody looking at their phone in the house, sat on their own. So, yeah,
I think the thing I'm just going to add here before I go into lesson number 5 is like, I think from an outsider to the person who's having the grief or going through that experience, and you can maybe agree with this from that lesson, the conversation you had, it's don't be afraid to ask the question about them.
Yeah.
Because I think it's actually brings their memory to light. And I think people are quite conscious, I know I am, to ask that question again. Tell me more about this person, like that. Or it could be a question, right? But I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, and like, I don't know whether this, I mean, this is just me talking from personal experience. And, you shared, Rich, about your friend, like, taking his own life. And my first initial thought was like, oh, what was his name? Like, tell me more about him. What was his name?
Yeah,
Ian. So it's like asking their name, because like someone being able to like speak that person's name again, it kind of like, it feels hard, but then you're like, oh, actually, this is not that, like, it's not that difficult. And then you can open up the conversation, and that allows you, that person, to go wherever they want with. They might say, oh, he's called Ian, I don't want to talk about it. Or, oh, Ian, and Ian was, the life and soul of the party. And then that's how you get into like, it's a nice way to keep that memory.
Yeah, and it makes you bring back all the good memories, I think.
Yeah.
Lesson number 5, Roxy. Last one.
Yeah, last one. So lesson number 5 is around how mindfulness can be life-changing. I didn't I knew before I came to JAAQ, I knew about mindfulness, and you think like a bit soft and fluffy, and there was
Can I jump in quickly? Are you going to plug our friend Amy Polly here? Is this what you're going to do?
Well, yes, I am. She's probably sat there watching. But no, like, genuinely, mindfulness, and I think the way that Amy Polly does kind of talk about it more in like a funfulness way. It doesn't need to be, where you sit and you just think. You can kind of do it on the go. And I'm a person that is constantly on the go, but like actually being mindful in like certain moments, like being present. And I think where I found mindfulness good is to connect with my emotions. Like, I do feel like I'm quite an emotional person, and like being present with those emotions, it can be like, has helped me massively. And even mindfulness in just like in running, even just like when I've done a lot of running challenges, like being mindful, like in the running, when it gets hard, like thinking about like, what can I feel? What can I see? What can I smell? What can I hear? What can I don't know which one I missed. I think there's 5. But just having that, being mindful and present, and then linking back into like that being my ritual at bedtime of like the mindfulness and just like calming my brain, because I am constantly always on the go, and my brain is constantly always on the go. So just taking those moments, and I often do this like during interviews, is like I'll take a toilet break, but it's actually a mindful toilet break where I will listen to something for just 2 minutes, just to just be present and breathe and just like take a minute for myself. And I think we need more of those like mindful moments throughout the day, just to, I guess, even just to be in the moment and be present with what beauty and goodness and loveliness is happening in the world, but also just for like ourselves, to like check in with ourselves and just be there for a moment. So that was, I think, more of Amy Polly has now become a very good friend off the back of being in the chair. And I've built a lot of amazing, phenomenal friendships, relationships with people that have been through these doors, and Amy Polly is one of them. But just in her way that she I've implemented mindfulness, and obviously I've got a mindfulness teacher on tap, basically. So, if I ring with a problem, I get hit with, let's just do some mindfulness, or have you thought about it? And so I think it's people incorporating mindfulness in their day, even if it's just like small bits of things, I think is is amazing, because this actually, so this is a great example. There's a lot of like, we talked about intrusive thoughts yesterday. It's going a bit off piece. Intrusive thoughts yesterday, and this lady gave an analogy. She said, we have these intrusive thoughts that come into our brain, and they're kind of unwanted. She was like, if you went to a supermarket and you didn't like bananas, you wouldn't put bananas in your basket. And if somebody came in and put bananas in your basket, you'd be like, why are you putting bananas in my basket? Take them out. And you just put the bananas back on the shelf. She was like, kind of intrusive thoughts think like they work in that way. It's like, if you keep that thought in your mind, you don't want it to be there. It's like you're keeping your bananas in your basket, and then you're thinking, why are they in my basket? Like, and then you're overthinking these things. And I think mindfulness these intrusive thoughts and your overthinking brains, they can just kind of bring you back to a sense of like being present and just taking a moment and not like letting those thoughts or emotions, in probably my sense, like run away with you. So yeah, that is I guess my number 5, mindfulness and being more present in the moment.
I love that. I also love, I think that example is going to stick with me, the bananas in a basket example. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Gone for intrusive thoughts, I think. I have got a follow-up question. And my follow-up question is, what impact have you seen from implementing mindfulness on your kind of output and performance and well-being?
Well, mindfulness has definitely helped me with my sleep, like setting me up for a successful environment and for sleep. And just, I think it's really important for somebody like myself, and probably like the majority of the working world, like we're so go, 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 go. And we almost think like, when can we even take this time? But like, even just going for a walk in the park and being like actively mindful in what you're doing, walking in the park, can like just reset. Like this is one thing. It's like almost you could have a bad morning and then you reset and you can go into the afternoon in a bit better mindset. So like it's almost like little resets throughout the day, which I think if you're in like a fast work paced, I guess everyone is in like a fast, busy, stressful, there's a lot going on in people's worlds. So just like having those little moments to like reset, I think has been life-changing. I actually think I need to do this more. I can ask a follow-up question. Are you good at mindfulness, Rich?
Terrible.
I should make a commitment to do it more.
Yeah. I think my challenge, and this is where I get to thinking about this, is I'm also on the neurodivergent area, and I was taught that organization was my key. Mm-hmm. And so rather than mindfulness, to control my thoughts, I have to organize my thoughts. Mm-hmm. I have to know where they are, and I have to have like things, because my biggest stress is that they can be anywhere at all times and I can forget things. So once I've got that, that's what helps me with my mindfulness. Mm-hmm. I guess because I'm a gym goer, I'm mindful in the gym. Mm-hmm. And so I have moments where I'm in myself thinking about muscles working, where I'm training, where I'm breathing, all that kind of stuff. So maybe I am, but not actively practicing.
Are you like, oh, I stink in the gym today? That's funny. Yeah. And you're like going through can I smell? What can I feel?
Yeah. Why is there so much sweat falling off of me for no reason? What is that? Oh, it's me. Oh, God. Where's the deodorant? Yeah, so yeah. I hope Amy Polly's not watching, because I'll get a message saying, you need to do this a bit better. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's my 5 high 5 top tips on what I've learned. But like I said before, Rich, like there's so many lessons that I've learned. I feel very honored and privileged to be in this role that I'm in at the moment and seeing that firsthand. But like ultimately it's out there for everybody to kind of indulge and to see, and you can kind of dip in and out of, it's not, I don't see JAAQ as, you're not going to be Netflix. It's almost like you don't want someone to really go there, but ultimately if it's something's either going to be impacting you in your world, mental health wise, or in someone else that you know's world. There's always like, and that's what I often see from the interviews, like if it doesn't relate to me personally, it's like, I know, oh, my friend such a body is struggling with that, or oh, my mum is really, and I really relate to that because of my mum. And this is the thing of JAAQ, it's share, like you can go on there to kind of support others as well. So like sharing things of, or even finding, like we ask questions around like supporting, like how do I support somebody with depression, or how do I really have a conversation about cancer with someone who's just been diagnosed? Like ask the expert, because, or ask somebody that's got lived experience that, you know, before you go and, you know, I don't know, put your foot in it, or, you know, not say anything. Because I guess that's the challenge, isn't it, around mental health? Like people, they don't know what to say, so then they ultimately don't say anything. And I think that is where JAAQ you can go onto JAAQ and ask those questions that maybe feel uncomfortable, but you can speak to an expert, you can speak to a lived experience and get those answers. Before that, then you then ultimately have a conversation, so it can help, I guess, in that sense as well.
Yeah, wicked. No, I think it's a great resource, and I appreciate you coming on here and sharing these tips. I am going to ask you now to do me a favor, because you, and this is live, so there's accountability as well. You have to now share all of the resources and links for those 5 lessons.
I will stay in the studio until I do that, because as soon as I go out there, you know, I'll be on to 500 other But yeah, I guess I know we're going to go, but the message is that you're not alone, and there's always help out there, whether that be the JAAQ platform, a professional doctor, or a helpline. There is always help out there. So do not sit and struggle on your own, please, if that's all you take away from today. But yeah, thank you, Rich. And yeah, we're wrapping up.
Yeah, what a great place to finish. Thank you, Roxy. You're a superstar. I appreciate you and your time. Stay where you are just quickly. Everybody else, see you next week when I talk to Henry about the Hidden Truths performance. So yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.